Hi, today's podcast is about the leader starts with you. I have a favorite thought quote that I use that you can't be a great leader if you aren't striving to be a great person. And this is a key aspect of where leaders fail because they think that leadership is about position. They think that leadership is about telling what other people should, to do, or knowing everything to do. But it's really not the case at all. Before you lead others, you have to lead yourself. And that really starts with ownership. That is ownership of your mindset, of your choices, of your energy at times. It's really important that if we know ourselves, if we know our strengths, then we know how to make sure to use those strengths to make a positive impact on the people around us and on our department, our company, our organization. We also need to make sure that we know our weaknesses because we want to hide our weaknesses as a leader. We want to have other people think that we're perfect, which heads up, no one thinks you're perfect. So everyone sees your flaws just as much as you see your flaws. But what's key is you want to make sure that you also start to see what other people might see in you, right? That they look up to. It's a really important thing. You also, as a leader, need to make sure that you see more in others than they might see in themselves. I've had a great person who was underneath me as a director that when he was a staff member, we saw this guy and just the great strengths that he had, and we're like, we want to have him as one of our directors. And when we first, approached him about it, he's like, no, I'm really comfortable where I'm at. I don't think I have that skill set, And we're like, okay, but we're coming back. We're going to talk to you about it again. Because we knew that who he was as a person was the right set of personality traits and caring that would make a great leader. And what is important is that we need to make sure that we as people know what our strengths are, that we as people, as leaders or before we become a leader, we have to know how we can have impact. And you have to remember that people don't follow titles, right? They follow your presence. It is this important thing that people, your team, will sense whether you're centered or whether you're scattered. They will feel comfortable when you are comfortable. They will feel kind and caring when you are kind and caring. And we all need to know that we create the culture in our departments, our organizations, our whole company based on who we are. And I love that. As a leader, it all starts with you. How cool is that? How terrifying is that? So we need to make sure that, we keep in mind that if we see a problem with our team, I was working with a great person last week who was telling me about the fact that he was having some real issues with trust with his team. And, as we worked through things, what was interesting is that he came to this epiphany, this realization that actually his team's lack of trust was because he has a lack of trust. And his lack of trust came because he really, as he grew up, never learned to have great self-confidence. And that lack of self-confidence then caused him not to believe people when they complimented him, not to think that he was the cause of a lot of his success. And he just downplayed all this stuff that decreased his trust in himself and then decreased his trust on the people around him. And all of the little things that he did as he just led his team over time caused this culture of just mistrust. And what was so great is that as he came to that realization, like I said, this epiphany, he was like, well, now I know how to change it. Now I know how to change the trust of my team. And he recognized it starts with me, that I have to become more trusting and I have to talk to my people about trust. And I'm like, you are totally on. Great job. The key is leadership starts in the mirror. All right. Are you living the values that others expect from you? It is such a key thing where if you continue to work on yourself, if you figure out what your values are, what your principles are, what your priorities are, then guess what? Your people will start to have some of the same values and principles and priorities. Hopefully, you'll do a great job of hiring the right people based off of those values and principles and priorities. And then you'll do reviews with your staff based on it. You'll congratulate them based on it. You'll tell them how they need to improve based on your values, your principles, and your priorities. So it is a classic walk the walk scenario. People will listen to your actions way more than listen to your words. All right. I'm going to repeat that. People will listen to your actions way more than they will listen to your words. A leader that I worked with who was this awesome little powerhouse. She was probably, I don't know, 5'3", and a wonderful, amazing human being. Just one of my favorite friends. And I remember a time when she was talking about in her office, she had a person who came to the front desk and was this 6'4", 6'5" guy who was unhappy with his bill, and he was not being nice to the front desk person. And that's just classic, right? The front desk just gets beat up. And what was interesting is that she saw it from across the room, stopped what she was doing, walked over, and she said, "Hi, my name is blank. I think that we have a problem. How can I help you?" Or, "I see that you have a problem. How can I help you?" And he's like, this. And she's like, "I don't really appreciate, kind of how you're speaking to me. Can we talk more nicely over here? And then I'll help you to deal with your problem." And what was so great is that her entire team saw her do that, so go up to this person who was being a bully. And she just knew that that was wrong. And she knew that she would protect her team. And she knew that she wouldn't allow another person to attack one of her teammates. So the fact that she stood up to the bully in the office helped her people to know that they had the power, they had the strength to be able to do the same thing. And again, she's a little person, and so it is wonderful when people know their values so much, when they have their priorities lined up so well, that when they see something that is misaligned externally with their values, like when this guy came in, that they aren't going to tolerate that, right? The other thing is that we all need to know if we are misaligned, right, internally. If we are misaligned with our values, it will show externally, right? It will show in how we do what we do, how we say what we say, how we lead. We need to make sure that we are leading authentically, that what we believe as a person is how we lead in our profession. This idea of kind of clarity and integrity, they are what really create influence. All right. These are what the people around us see and experience from us. Remember, people will believe your actions way more than your words, right? Your family, your friends, your spouse. We all know that a person can say, "Well, I'm fine with this." And they know, from their tone, they are not fine at all. So the words were not real, not honest, but we still understand what the person's saying. All right. So make sure to take the time to know your values. Then make sure to take the time to live your values. It's one of the most important things that we can do is to be authentic, right? As a person at home and at work. It always kills me when I have staff members who say, "Gosh, I get so tired at work. When I go home, I'm just drained." And I'm like, why is that? If you're being authentic with who you are, at work versus at home, you shouldn't have to put on this kind of mask of, "Oh, I need to always fake that I'm happy at work, or fake that I know what I'm doing all the time at work." No one expects you to be perfect. It is such a big deal that when you start with yourself, you give others permission to do the same, right? You need to be the example. You don't need to act like you have it all put together, right? Because people want the real you. All right. Again, as a leader, you need to start with you. As a leader, you need to know yourself. Then what's really cool is you can help your people to know themselves. Because the more that you help to develop your people, the more your people will stand behind you and listen to you and do what you need, in a given day or project or whatever. You know, it is very interesting that the last boss that I had, he was so good. I mean, he was one of my favorite bosses that I've had because he cared so much about others. And what was neat is that the people around them obviously knew that he cared about them. He allowed the people around him to care then about his people. I'm sorry, their people, because he cared about them. And what is so important, if you want to develop a culture in your office, in your team, in your department, in your organization of kindness, you be kind first. Of accountability, you be accountable first. Of caring, you be caring first. If you want to have people that know that I am going to work really hard when I'm at work, they just see you working really hard at work. And they need to experience you holding them accountable for the same thing. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing where we are consistent, all right, with who we are, what we expect from other people, and then the accountability that we hold ourselves to and our people to. When there's consistency with that, man, people will know that we are being authentic. So please make sure and remember, leadership starts with you. Being a great leader starts with striving to be a great person, right? That's hard. And we all mess up. You don't need to be perfect. The key is, are you constantly learning? Are you constantly growing? Are you constantly developing yourself and the people around you? And if you're doing that, you will be a great leader. Thanks. Have a great day.